The Biedermeyer period refers to an era in Central Europe between 1815 and 1848 during which the middle class grew and arts appealed to common sensibilities. It began with the time of the Congress of Vienna at the end of the Napoleonic Wars, and ended with the onset of the European revolutions in 1848. Although the term itself is a historical reference, it is predominantly used to denote the artistic styles that flourished in the fields of literature, music, the visual arts and interior design. Background: the Biedermeyer period does not refer to the era of time as a whole, but to a particular mood and set of trends that grew out of the unique underpinnings of the time in Central Europe. There were two driving forces for the development of the period. The first was the growing urbanization and industrialization leading to a new urban middle class which created a new kind of audience for the arts. The second was the political stability prevalent under Clemens Wenzel von Metternich following the end of the Napoleonic Wars. The effect was for artists and society in general to concentrate on the domestic and the non-political. Writers, painters, and musicians began to stay in safer territory, and the emphasis on home life for the growing middle class meant a blossoming of furniture design and interior decorating. As a personality type, A. Biedermeyer is characterized as a conservative, unimaginative middle-class personality, content but vulnerable to upset when disturbed by unfavorable social or economic conditions. Furniture design and interior decorating. Biedermeyer was an influential German style of furniture design that evolved during the years 1815 to 1848. The period extended into Scandinavia, as disruptions due to numerous states that made up the German nation were not unified by rule from Berlin until 1871. These post-Biedermeyer struggles, influenced by historicism, created their own styles. Throughout the period, emphasis was kept upon clean lines and minimal ornamentation consistent with Biedermeyer's basis in utilitarian principles. As the period progressed, however, the style moved from the early rebellion against Romantic-era fussiness to increasingly ornate commissions by a rising middle class, eager to show the newfound wealth. The idea of clean lines and utilitarian postures would resurface in the 20th century, continuing into the present day. Middle to late Biedermeyer furniture design represents a heralding towards historicism and revival eras long sought for. Social forces originating in France would change the artisan-patron system that achieved this period of design, first in the Germanic states and, then, into Scandinavia. The middle-class growth originated in the English Industrial Revolution, and many Biedermeyer designs owe their simplicity to Georgian lines of the 19th century. As the proliferation of design publications reached the loose Germanic states and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Biedermeyer style was a simplified interpretation of the influential French Empire style of Napoleon I, which introduced the romance of ancient Roman Empire styles, adapting these to modern early 19th century households. Biedermeyer furniture used locally available materials such as cherry, ash and oak woods rather than the expensive timbers such as fully imported mahogany. Whilst this timber was available near trading ports such as Antwerp, Hamburg and Stockholm, it was taxed heavily whenever it passed through another principality. This made mahogany very expensive to use, and much local cherry and pear wood was stained to imitate the more expensive timbers. Stylistically, the furniture was simple and elegant. Its construction utilized the ideal of truth through material, something that later influenced the Bauhaus and Art Deco periods. Many unique designs were created in Vienna, primarily because a young apprentice was examined on his use of material construction, originality of design, and quality of cabinet work. before being admitted to the League of Approved Master Cabinet Makers. Furniture from the earlier period was the most severe and neoclassical in inspiration. It also supplied the most fantastic forms which the second half of the period lacked, being influenced by the many style publications from England. Biedermeyer furniture was the first style in the world that emanated from the growing middle class. It preceded Victoriana and influenced mainly Germanic-speaking countries. In Sweden, Marshal Bernadotte, whom Napoleon appointed as ambassador to Sweden to sideline his ambitions, abandoned his support for Napoleon in a shrewd political move. Later, after being adopted by the King of Sweden, he became Sweden's new king Carl Johan. The Swedish Carl Johan style, similar to Biedermeyer, retained its elegant and blatantly Napoleonic style throughout the 19th century. Biedermeyer furniture and lifestyle was a focus on exhibitions at the Vienna Applied Arts Museum in 1896. The many visitors to this exhibition were so influenced by this fantasy style and its elegance that a new resurgence, a revival period, became popular amongst European cabinet makers. This revival period lasted up until the Art Deco style was taken up. Biedermeyer also influenced the various Bauhaus styles through the truth in material philosophy. The original Biedermeyer period changed with the political unrest of 1845 to 1848. With the revolutions in European historicism, furniture of the later years of the period took on a distinct Wilhelminian or Victorian style. The term Biedermeyer is also used to refer to a style of clock made in Vienna in the early 19th century. The clean and simple lines included a light and airy aesthetic, especially in Viennese regulators of the Lanthandler and Dackler styles. Architecture. Biedermeyer architecture is marked by simplicity and elegance, exemplified by the paintings of Jacob Alt and Karl Spitzweg. One of the most elegant surviving Biedermeyer buildings is the Stadttempel in Vienna. Through the unity of simplicity, mobility and functionality, the Biedermeyer neoclassical architecture created tendencies of crucial influence for the Jugendstil, Art Nouveau, the Bauhaus, and the 20th century architecture. Visual arts. Austrian painting during this era is characterized by the commitment to portray a sentimental and pious view of the world in a realistic way. Biedermeyer themes reinforced feelings of security, Gemütlichkeit, traditional pieties and simplicity, eschewing political and social commentary during the epoch. Thus, the techniques, while classic in nature, were of the utmost importance to reach a realistic rendering. Regarding the thematic, the technique was seen not only as a narrative medium to tell the past in anecdotal vignettes, but also to represent the present. This formed an aesthetic unity most evidenced in the portraits, landscapes and contemporary reporting genre scenes. Key painters of the Biedermeyer movement are Karl Spitzweg, Ferdinand Georg Waldmüller, Josip Tomink, Friedrich von Ameling, Friedrich Gauermann, Johann Baptist Reiter, Peter Fendi, Michael Nedder, Joseph Danhauser, Edmund Louis Edward Wodick, among others. The biggest collection of Viennese Biedermeyer paintings in the world is currently hosted by the Belvedere Palace Museum in Vienna. In Denmark, the Biedermeyer period corresponds with the Danish Golden Age, a time of creative production in Denmark, which encompasses the paintings of Christopher Wilhelm Eckersberg and his students, including Wilhelm Benz, Christian Köbke, Martinus Rorby, Konstantin Hansen, and Wilhelm Mastron, as well as the neoclassical sculpture inspired by the example set by Bertel Thorvaldsen. The period also saw the development of Danish architecture in the neoclassical style. Copenhagen, in particular, acquired a new look, with buildings designed by Christian Frederick Hansen and by Michael Gottlieb Bindesbol. Music. Biedermeyer in music is most evident in the numerous publications for in-home music making, published arrangements of operatic excerpts, German Lieder, and some symphonic works that could be performed at the piano without professional musical training, illustrate the broadened reach of music in this period. Current usage. Terms like Bernhard Biedermeyer and Generation Biedermeyer have been coined to describe parallels between the historical Biedermeyer and the German present. The underlying allusion is being used as well in related wordings like Bernhard Bourgeoisie, Bernhard Biedermeyer, and Generation Biedermeyer. The 2010 Shell Jugen study used the term Generation Biedermeyer for the mainstream of the younger generation in 2010. Security and private happiness then was more important than political engagement.